This is a wonderful graphic that I found on Wikicommons. And I think that this explains why the market of one is so important. This is global shipping lines, and I believe this is maybe over a year. There's some better visualizations of this where it's in levels of color and you can really tell the density of the movement. And what's interesting about this, I didn't grab these other images because the copyright, I didn't want to infringe upon it, but there are other images that show the major pollutant areas of the oceans, and they're almost identical. I mean, you could just overlay them. They're almost identical to these shipping routes. So, design for the end user being you, the designer, is great. There we go. Also, this lovely trucking. This is one day of trucking in 1998. So, hopefully we can look at these lines and begin to think about how they can function a little bit more like these lines. There's a great article in the Harvard Business Review called, what was it called? Predators and Prey, and was talking about how we can look at economy as ecology. And instead of trying to squash our competitors, how we can actually create an ecology where every forest needs every other plant to survive. And everyone is actually, as opposed to being in competition, they're in cahoots. They're working together because they realize that they need the entire forest to support the one plant. And the one plant needs to help support the other plant so the forest can exist. So, that's just sort of, again, going back to this concept of how can we shorten this, this cycle here. So, okay, so run through very quickly because I know we're probably going into our time here. This is just a few more examples of how we've taken these technologies and kind of done a mashup between them and students in our neighborhood. So this is an example. It might be hard to see. This is one test run we did doing a press fit project where, I don't know if you can see this file design up here, but press fit is this really fun way of taking two-dimensional designs and creating three-dimensional build-outs out of them. And in order to do that, you have to be able to cut with a lot of specificity. So with something like a milling machine, you can do something like that. Somebody's waving. Is that time? Okay, got it. Okay, so we'll run through quickly. So these are students who have never done anything in a vector design program anymore, or before, and they're taking their vector designs. They're creating toolpaths. That toolpath is being generated to numeric control code, and then this milling machine is being driven by that, and the students are then having their outcome, which is these crazy funky shapes that they created their first time around, which then evolved into this monstrosity of a press fit piece, which was 9 feet tall and took over my office for a really long time, and I pretty much wanted to make a bonfire out of it, but it was brilliant and fantastic and had solar panels and all sorts of great stuff. So here's the students building it. Adaptive Tech, again, is another project. This was a group of student interns who came together to create another adaptation for a cell phone for a woman named Pam. And running through again, more things about community building in the park. This is a clean-up park. It has some issues with crime at night. We did a program where we did a laser light style graffiti to take back the park at night and worked with a bunch of other organizations to do so. Some really great, this is kind of a Cartesian arm robot built by an inventor named Brian Korzadal, who works with us. These fantastic light trees built by Bill Watson. That we prototyped the leaf on the acrylic for. One of our great partner organizations here that I just wanted to mention, this is sort of going into the future here. Oops, sorry. Excuse me. Going into the future, I want to note that we're going to be working more closely with Media Arts Center, and I'm not going to talk too much about that because I have been given the time nod. So they're a fantastic organization, also working with digital media. Working more with workshops and adults. We've worked a lot with students, but working with adults and this idea of building community through member-based contribution is something that we're beginning to work with and we have great hopes for. Some of the inspiration around that comes from Hackerspaces and ShareSD, which is a local kind of meetup for electronic musicians and geeks. And Open Design City, which is, I think, a really interesting project happening in the UK that has to do with sharing space, sharing tools, sharing ideas, which I think also adds to this idea of a new potential for a new bit of an economy that can be shifted. So quickly, last but not least, we have to thank our partners and our sponsors and our collaborators. We definitely would not be here without the help of the Viz Lab at SDSU, which is an amazing center that takes mass amounts of information and visualizes them into data sets and GIS layers that are then distributed to first responders and NGOs and governmental organizations around the world that are having hurricanes or other natural disasters. UCSD Extension, also a great supporter of us, Media Arts, on and on. We thank all of them. And that will be it. I'll conclude on that. Thank you all so much. I know I'm over time. So, the end. So we started.